the average Google query is just 4.2 words long, but the average ChatGPT prompt length is 22 words. The job now isn't to win with one perfect prompt like it was to win with one perfect keyword. We win on this big volume keyword here. We win on, SERP for that category. It's actually to win the category itself. Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here today for a solo episode, and I'm going to be talking about how to measure AEO, Answer Engine Optimization. It's something we've spoken about a lot on this podcast, of course. It's what a lot of the kind of marketing community is discussing right now, how to actually get visibility in AIs, how do we get cited in AIs. But actually one thing that's often missing from the conversation is how on earth do we measure if we're doing the right things? How do we make sure that the effort, the time, the resource we're putting into making sure our site is set up structurally and technically to be able to be seen and found and cited in AI answers? And also, how do we make sure the content we're producing is actually being found and contributing towards our visibility within AIs too? So this episode, I'm actually going to be focusing on the kind of measurement problem that's coming out of, all the effort going into AEO and actually how we start to get around that. Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow, because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today. It's a really, really exciting time for AEO. I was at Grow, which is HubSpot's leading European event last week, and there was so much conversation around AEO and some brilliant talks from Kip Bodner, CMO at HubSpot, Asia Frost, who we had on the podcast to talk about their AEO, HubSpot's AEO approach, and a lot to take away from it. Again, I do think one area we can hopefully bring some insight on this podcast is actually the measurement side of things. There's some good information out there now on how to actually go about structuring a site, creating content. Of course, we'll continue to bring that insight. But one area I think there's a gap in is actually measuring all of this. And one of the main issues is that we are starting to understand, the market's starting to understand that there is a big difference between SEO and AEO, particularly in the visibility areas of the two. So there was an Ahrefs report that found that 83% of ChatGPT answers cite URLs that do not appear in Google for the same queries, and only 10% of cited URLs appear in Google's top 10. So there is a big divide and a lack of correlation between citations and visibility in AI and Google's traditional SEO play, which is all about being, found in the top 10 answers and the top one, hopefully. And that means that not only is it requiring a different method to be found, it obviously requires a different method to actually measure the success of that as well. And, we all kind of understand the keyword measurement approach, right? We find the keyword that we want to be found for. We get something like Ahrefs or SEMrush in order to track that keyword and track our domain visibility against it to make sure, that we're ranking for that keyword and which page is ranking and have we improved, have we not improved, and things like that. But obviously measurement has to evolve with the channels evolving as well. And the way that people use AI to search is entirely different to how they use Google to search. There was a SEMrush study actually, which showed that the average Google query is just 4.2 words long, but the average ChatGPT prompt length is 22 words. So whilst 4.2 words is, fairly easy to like consistently replicate between, a set of buyers, having 22 consistent words appear between like a cohort of buyers is going to be extremely rare, which means that whilst SEO saw consistent language, consistent keywords, consistent like phrases being used again and again and again, because that was kind of the psychological behavior to search. Like you would enter, 1 to 4 words and then go about gathering your information that way. Whereas when it comes to using AI for search, like we understand that the more context we give it, the better answer we're going to get out of it. And it can kind of like do that informational research for us, after we give it that level of information. So the way that these two platforms are being used is very different, which means they require different measurement approaches. Like whilst SEMrush and Ahrefs do have AI search monitoring capabilities, like just thinking about being able to create content for AI search to, adjust your website for AI search and then measure in the same existing way you did for SEO is not going to give you the visibility you need to make sure you're progressing in the right way. There's also a big difference in the data that we actually have access to here. So Google exposes their search volume data via an API. So tools like Google Keyword Planner that we all know and love for so long, SEMrush, Ahrefs, they're literally built to, get that data in and aggregate it and format it in ways that work for us. And it also means that ranking for those keywords is deterministic. One keyword, one SERP, basically. Whereas visibility on AI, like on search volumes in AI right now, is not visible to us, not visible to anyone via API, at least publicly. So, and ranking is probabilistic. You could have, one prompt, but that doesn't mean you're going to have one answer for it. It's a probabilistic model that could determine answers based on like memory, based on freshness of content, based on, small things that change from user to user and, like answer to answer 1 minute from the next minute. So where we have the old SEO model, which is, we've got one keyword we want to be found for. We know the search volume. We know where we rank for it because we can even search for it if we want to and see where we're ranking. And we can, measure the traffic to that page. Whereas the new AEO model is basically distilling that keyword. So let's say, for example, it's project management software. We've got that keyword that we want to be found for. It's a commercial keyword that people will be using when they are looking to research solutions in that category. We now take that one keyword and we turn it into a category of prompts. So that means we have different variables from that single keyword. If you think about, I'm sure many people have looked at the kind of fan out modeling of how AI systems actually work, in that they might take one prompt and then they fan out, like, I can't remember the exact volume, but 50 plus different variations of that prompt in order to gather the passages, the information to actually give you the answer. We're trying to, replicate that fan out in some areas. So what we're doing here is basically taking that one keyword and saying, here are the different ways that our ICP might actually distill that one keyword down, or expand it out, I suppose, into a prompt with a bit more context, a bit more, meaning behind it for a conversational search experience. So instead of that being AI, instead of that being project management software, it might be best project management software for manufacturing marketing teams who are, scaling fast or have just received Series A funding based out of New York City. Like, that's the kind of level we might want to go down. We might want to start a little bit higher. So it's like best project management software for cybersecurity companies, best project management software for, SaaS sales teams or something like that. And from that, we're able to create our different variants from that one keyword. Because again, like, there are on average 22 words in a ChatGPT prompt. That means that being able to understand the exact prompt that's being used by your buyers is pretty much impossible. It's not going to happen. So our model for measurement needs to make sure we are covering a variation of prompts that relate to a keyword, if we think about it in the old way, and we are looking for directional improvement on those prompts. So are we probabilistically coming up more after redoing our website from a technical standpoint, to improve our machine readability or the content we're producing? Are we then starting to be found and cited and be visible more in AI searches for these prompt variants that we are creating in relation to this category? I think the key point here is the job now isn't to win with one perfect prompt like it was to win with one perfect keyword. We win on this big volume keyword here. We win on, SERP for that category. It's actually to win the category itself. And then if you're relevant, large language models will pull you into those answers probabilistically, but you have to be working for the category, not for the perfect prompt. And that means ultimately creating a lot more content than you used to. We used to be able to create one page for one keyword. And whilst that's still kind of true now, we are expanding out in such vast ways to cover off, these 30 probable variants of that prompt rather than just that one single keyword, because that is how large language models like to retrieve very accurate, very semantic data, very, probabilistically, it's going to be very accurate to what you're actually putting in. They're not going to deviate too far from what you're saying in order to get those fan out queries. So the approach really is now to not look at it from a one-to-one relationship basis. It's actually to look at it from a one category that we want to cover off for our ICP. Then how do we turn that into lots of variables and dominate that entire category rather than that one keyword? Now, creating those prompts to actually measure them is a hard part, right? Because like I said, we don't actually know what our buyers are searching for unless we ask them. And by the way, we have actually had some inquiries from AI channels, and our sales team have asked what they search for. Really, really insightful. If you can get that data and get your sales team asking on calls, it's really interesting. They've literally copied and pasted the prompt to us, and it totally backs up everything we're seeing around. The level of context being added to prompts is just absolutely incredible. But yeah, that's something additional you could add. Where you could get a lot of value is by essentially simulating your ICP, because prompts are so unique to an individual and they're so contextual to an individual's situation. We need to basically understand how our ICP would think around their situation. What are the kind of category entry points they would be seeking help in? What pains will they experience before they find your solution? Understanding these things and building that out into ICP documentation is the best place to start, because once you have that in mind, so here's our ICP, firmographically, these are the companies, the areas we want to focus on. Here are the pain points they typically have before coming to us. These are the category entry points for a lot of them. You can then use that to basically form a project and create an AI version of your persona. And you can do this on, Claude projects, or create a custom GPT and essentially set instructions to understand your ICP and take the categories like we spoke about before and say, if they were searching for a solution in this category to serve X or Y, what would they search for? Then you have your prompt variables there based on your ICP information, not just, basic vague information about the prompts you want to find. It's actually based off of the people that you want to sell to and that you should understand. And that ICP data, by the way, can be formed of like your own internal understanding of your buyer, or you can do external market research using Winter, or on an alternative tool, or your own surveys or your own calls, your own transcripts and things like that with customers. Or one thing we're doing is like using Ask Elephant to look at those pain points and feeding that into ICP data. So yeah, like a lot of ways you can actually gather up this ICP documentation, but that's a really important part of creating these prompt variants, because we don't want to just put our finger in the air and guess here. We do want to create some sort of systematic way to roughly think of like how our buyers would think and act. So once you have that project or custom GPT in place, you can produce a directional prompt list that's anchored in real ICP logic. Again, this is not going to be perfectly accurate. Like, you might have the odd few that will actually be asked in AI searches, but this is just a like representation of prompts that will be used across your ideal customers. Like, they're not keywords. It's really important to remember here. Prompts are not keywords. They are like patterns of intent almost, that like together, when looking at them, and we'll get into measurement next, how to look at these, like you want to be looking at going in the right direction holistically, like directionally pulling in the right areas, not on a one-to-one relationship, but like a category level, doing these things, and we're moving in the right area. Most businesses don't realize just how much their website is holding them back. VDOT were generating strong demand, but their site just wasn't converting it. We rebuilt their site with their buyers in mind, sharpened the user experience and aligned it to their goals. And within 90 days after launch, high intent conversions increased by 100% and demo requests rose by 14%. That's what happens when your website finally works as hard as your marketing. If you think your website might be holding you back, let's start the conversation at blendb2b.com. If you're enjoying this show, let me recommend another one from the HubSpot podcast network that I personally never miss. Nudge, hosted by Phil Agnew. What I love about Nudge is that it's all about the psychology and science behind human behavior. What makes us take action, form habits, or say yes. And then it shows how those same principles shape great marketing and sales. In one episode, Phil looks at how just 3 words in a text message boosted vaccination rates and may have saved hundreds of lives. That's the endowment effect at work, a tiny psychological nudge creating a huge outcome. Every episode of Nudge is about 20 minutes, fast-paced, no fluff, and packed with ideas you can actually use. Check it out. Nudge is available wherever you get your podcast. All right, let's actually get into how you measure this, because we've got our prompt list now. We understand the difference in measurement between SEO and AEO. We've got our list of prompts that we think our ICPs will be using in these large language models to find products and services just like ours. How do we actually measure those now? And there are a lot of different tools out there on the market. HubSpot have acquired Xfunnel, which is a really great tool. There are, lots of others. Ahrefs and SEMrush have their own built-in products. But we are a Scrunch partner now. Scrunch is an AEO tool that enables you to track prompt visibility across like 10 different large language models. It's a really powerful tool. It's one that, we tried out a lot of different tools to get to Scrunch, but it's the one that we think gave us the best visualization of data and the best flexibility for managing a lot of different prompts for different customers and things like that. So we are a Scrunch partner now, and we will also have Kevin, who is head of marketing at Scrunch, on the podcast in the next episode. So we can think of this section like a 2-parter almost. I'm going to kind of give you a bit of an overview of what you should be looking to do with AEO measurement broadly. I'm obviously using Scrunch as an example because it's our preferred tool, and I would advise everyone to actually go and look at Scrunch because it's a really great tool. But when we have Kevin on in the next episode, we're going to be talking a bit more in depth around like actually how do these models work? Like how do we actually go about measuring, AI volume and things going forwards? Like what do we need to look out for that? And he'll just talk us through kind of like the AI landscape in a bit more depth and detail, like with other Scrunch customers, what they're seeing from a measurement perspective. And yeah, it should be a really, really good conversation. So think of this as, kind of like the teaser to that episode almost. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually load up Scrunch, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what we are measuring from our perspective, and what we're seeing and how we actually track this directional movement. All right, so let's actually take a look at Scrunch now, which, as I mentioned, is our platform of choice for measuring AEO, and one that I definitely think you should check out. So the first thing we can see here is our dashboard view. So we've got how many prompts we are tracking in Scrunch, the responses, so how many AI responses have been collected inside of Scrunch, the platforms that we're tracking and monitoring. So you can see Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT, etc. We can see our competitive presence. So how are we doing in the competitive presence space? So against our loaded up competitors, how much visibility do we have in comparison to them against our prompts? So we can see here that we started off around 25%, and we're now looking up to around 35%. So over the last kind of 20 days or so, we've improved our competitive presence by 10%, which is really great movement for us. And we can see down here the position, so where we are mentioned in AI answers, where are we at the top, where are we in the middle, where are we at the bottom. So that might allow us to optimize the content we're creating. When our brand is being mentioned, what sentiment is being used there, 100% positive for us, which is great. And in citations, where our brand is being mentioned, how many are using our brand? Actually, I think this is just citations in general for the prompts we're tracking. How many citations are from our brand? How many are from third parties? How many are from competitors? This is quite a hard one to influence. So seeing that we've got 198% improvement on being cited here, I think we actually started off at around 0%. We weren't being cited in kind of any prompts. So yeah, we've had some really good movement there using our AEO strategy. So this is the dashboard, a good overview of kind of the visibility we're seeing inside of Scrunch. But let's actually dive into some individual prompts so you can see those too. Okay, so looking at a prompt level within Scrunch, what you can do is upload all of those prompts we created as part of the persona like synthesization project. So you'll now have a load of prompts that you think your personas will be and your ICP will be asking in large language models. You can upload those to track inside of Scrunch. And what we can see here is now how often we are being presented as and referenced with inside of answers, how often our brand and our website is being cited within the answer, and then we can track the different models in here. So for this prompt, for example, which is B2B SaaS HubSpot website agency, a key prompt we would want to be found for our services. And I can see in here, for Google AI mode and ChatGPT, which is the two areas I'm focusing on right now, are we present or are we not present? So I can now check in ChatGPT here. And by the way, before I do that, we get a quick overview snapshot here of presence and citations. So this basically shows us we've got green for yes, you're present, red for no, you're not present. So this is what I'm saying again about directionally here. If we were red a couple of times and then green more times after we've maybe made some changes or produced some content, that's great. Probabilistically, we will not appear every single time. It's just not possible. I'm even surprised to see that we've got so much visibility in here and there aren't a few more red circles, because probabilistically it's really hard to appear first all of the time, or at least appear all of the time. What we can see here now is that when we click through into the ChatGPT platform and prompt variant there, The last few, I can't remember how many this is, 10 or so runs of this prompt, and whether we're visible or not. So we can see actually on the 28th of October, we weren't present, we weren't cited, but it's because the answer took a bit of a different approach. Actually, it wasn't citing agencies or services in order to use there. Same for the next 3 days. Actually, it was kind of giving advice on how to look for these agencies, or which areas to actually go in and think about using HubSpot. But we can see from October 31st, boom, we're there first, being cited actually for our homepage. October 31st, we're there again. And funnily enough, we did make some technical changes to our website. And we can see here we've got some different kinds of pages being cited in these responses. And overall, we can see that like from here, we are now trending completely in the right direction in order to be found for this kind of prompt variant there. So this is essentially what we're going to be tracking across, well, you saw how many prompts we've got in here, over 1,000, and different categories and areas we want to be visible in. We've got a lot of different variations of prompts, and we can see the visibility of those as we kind of start to produce content and improve our website technical areas and things like that throughout. So that's a kind of snapshot overview of how to actually visualize prompt improvement over time. So yeah, Scrunch is a really cool tool. I like the data visualization that we get within that. Finally, when we think about AEO measurement signals, there are other things to look at aside from prompt visibility, which is like, I would say prompt visibility is the earliest sign of success. If you're becoming more visible in those like categories, in those areas you want, you should then expect to see an increase in AI referral traffic to those pages that are being cited. So traffic from ChatGPT, from Perplexity, from Claude, things like that. And important to mention here that this traffic won't be as big as something like organic search, because the natural behavior isn't necessarily to click on every single link, every single citation. They might just see your brand name and then choose to progress their search through another means, or actually to end their search there, remember the brands and come back to Google search, for example. So then all of a sudden that's showing like organic search. So, it's important to bear that in mind, but AI referral traffic is still to be expected, I would say, from a good AEO strategy. It might just come as a lag after you start to see visibility in something like Scrunch and prompt visibility. You've also got branded search lift, something to bear in mind. So in Google Search Console, you can see how many people are actually entering your brand and hitting search. Important to keep track of that, because as I say, the user behavior of somebody using a large language model is different to Google. So it might be that they search for answers in AI and then they Google your brand name more, basically. And then that can result in an increase in like direct traffic and dark social signals, things like that. The next progression to track is self-reported attribution. Are people mentioning that they found you in AI engines? We certainly saw that after implementing our AI technical changes on the site and content strategy, that we're getting more mentions of, found you through ChatGPT or AI answers or whatever it may be. You really want to be tracking to make sure that those things are being seen, because relying on like AI referral traffic conversions alone leaves you in this kind of dark area where you might be visible in the AI engines, but people are just choosing to actually find your site and navigate to it via a different channel. So there we have the kind of AI measurement model that I would recommend using. It's like this 4-layer framework of prompt visibility with something like Scrunch. You've got your traffic and brand increase. You've got your commercial signals, and you've got any kind of like technical lift or impact as well from that. So I'll be tracking all of those things in order to make sure that what you're doing around AEO and all of the things you're hearing on LinkedIn and everything like that, when you're trying out these things, you actually have a way to measure it, because it's really important to understand like if the things you're doing are actually having an impact on that channel. Because the way we go about measurement is very different to how we've gone about measurement for SEO, for example. So important to kind of understand the theory behind the measurement model too, so that when you do it, you're kind of not approaching it from the old school SEO method, but from this new like AEO directional pull is right, if that makes sense, which I hope it does. So as I mentioned, we've got Kevin, head of marketing from Scrunch, on the next episode. So I'm sure we'll have a look more at the platform there. Hopefully these episodes that are slightly more like show and tell, because obviously there was a bit of a section in there that would only be more useful on YouTube, for example. But do let me know if you kind of want to see more show and tell things, and I'm sure we can work that into the schedule. But that's all for now. And really looking forward to this next episode with Kevin, and hopefully you guys enjoy it too, and I will catch you next time. This episode of Demand Decoded was brought to you by Blend. We help B2B technology companies grow through strategic, creative, and technical expertise, bringing you the capabilities you need to drive demand and turn it into real revenue impact for your business. If you enjoyed this episode, follow Demand Decoded on your favorite podcast platform, leave us a quick review, and we'll see you next time with more insight to help you grow.